Thank you, Yaira, and for your beautiful introduction, and thank you, Lydia, for your presentation. I've caught at least 30 minutes of it, so I've been inspired by it. And congratulations to everyone. I believe today is our final day. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yes, virtually.
Yeah, congratulations to everyone for what I believe has been something that is eye-opening for you. And as you create a bank for zero waste story, Yaira has introduced me with the many different hats that I've worn over the years. But one of the hats I'm actually quite proud of wearing is that we were part of the very, very first Go Green and Zero Waste campaign in Tanzania. And we brought, through an organization here called Nipe Fagio, we did a collection of zero waste stories, but more importantly than just the stories was the impact on the ground. And that impact on the ground that I'm talking about is in 2021, Tanzania passed a ban on single-use plastics. And a lot of this was because of journalists and storytellers and people who don't consider themselves journalists or storytellers, but who did tell stories, just like you who are in this meeting today. So as I speak about impact, I told Lydia that I've been driving today, so I'm actually taking this from my car. But I do hope that the two frameworks that I share with you today will be useful for you as you create your blogs, as you tell your stories, as you do all of this. We need to be able to measure the impact that we are having. Now, I'll take you back a little bit. And I don't know how interactive I can be. I don't know if I can ask you guys questions and get answers. Sometimes over Zoom, it's a little tricky. And I know I have, 30 minutes?
30 for presentation, 15 for questions. Yeah.
So I have 29 minutes left and then 15 questions. So my first question would be, when we say a story, as opposed to something like just information, right? What do we mean when we say this is a story and this other thing is not a story? Where do we draw that line? And this is an open question to anyone, but if no one volunteers, I will read your names out. When we speak of stories, what are we speaking of? Okay, Mr. Wahungu, Caleb.
Ani yangu, vipi wewe?
Habari kaka, how are you?
Sio mbaya. I'm really following interestingly and excited to listen to what you're unpacking.
Thank you. So when we say this is a story, what do we mean?
Yeah, it is the different information about, talking about either an event or series of events that have happened already. Something that is in history that someone is actually talking about. That either has, events, sequences, something like that. That's how I understand.
That's how you understand? Thank you for that, Caleb. This is my neighbor from Kenya. Yaira, I'll ask you as well. I know you're moderating today, but how is that different? Because the definition that Caleb has given me includes some things that you wouldn't call a story, right? For example, if I just tell you that today I've been driving from Dar es Salaam, which is a city on our coast, to Kilimanjaro, have I told you a story?
No, I think you've given me a piece of information. That's
why? Yeah. What would make it a story?
I think a story is more structured. it starts from somewhere and it carries the listener or audience through to the end. So there's a beginning and there's an end, and you can follow through. Like, that's more of a story. So it's more structured. I think that's the difference between just a piece of information and then a story. Yeah, that's what I think. There's also a comment in the chat box. Yeah.
I can't see the chat box. Let me try to open it.
Emmanuel says it's past experiences.
Emmanuel says it's past experiences.
Yeah.
Anguria says my sound is very low. Anguria, can you tell us what you think a story is? And then I'll give you something that I hope will be useful. Anguria, I don't know if I said the name correctly.
I don't know if he can hear you.
Okay.
Michael, are you on? I can't see him.
No, sorry. My line had dropped off earlier, but then I can come back.
Okay.
So we've said that it's past experiences. Emmanuel and both Caleb has said that as well. Yaira said maybe it's past experiences, but it also has a bit of a structure. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So does any retelling of a past experience with a beginning, middle, and end qualify as a story? Probably not, right? Just because of the challenges of this back and forth over Zoom, let me give you a framework that might help us understand what makes a story, right? If I tell you
Firstly,
right now...
Derek has his hand up.
Okay, Derek, welcome.
I hope he can hear
welcome,
you.
Sir.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you very much to take me on board. Yeah, I also just want to share my view about what we are discussing about a story. A story for me could be like a past or present. It could be a happy, sad, or how it's end to be like. So for me, a story would be a past or a present that has an ending point, either with a solution or how to solve it. Yeah, thank you.
We can even tell stories about the future, right? It doesn't necessarily only have to be about the past or the present, right? Now, if I take your answers, if I take Derek's answer and Yaira's answer, and I take Emmanuel's answer, and I've seen Michael Anguria has written it's a journey of change, and Nuasasira Fiona has said she thinks it's a sequence of events. Now, all of these hint towards what a story is, and I'm going to give you a very simple framework that I call the cha-cha-cha framework that I think will be very memorable, right? I hope the name itself already sounds African. I think it will be memorable and be easy for you to remember what makes up a story. The first cha is a character. Stories are a very human thing, right? Humans are a storytelling animal. We use stories to make sense of the world, right? We use stories to make sense of things. And at the heart of stories is a character, a person. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be a lion. It could be a child. It could be or whatever it is. There is a character at the heart of a story. A story is usually about someone or something, right? And that character and the context is that first cha, okay? The first cha-cha-cha. So if I speak about my day coming from Dar es Salaam to here, where I am now in Kilimanjaro, I am the character at the heart of that story. But a story is not complete if it's just a character. Like, it's not just if I just say there's a lady called Yaira Ofori, that's not a complete story yet. what begins to make something a story, and I know Lydia kind of took us through a bit generally on the hero's journey or the narrative arc. What begins to make a story is the second cha. Remember, there are 3 chas. The first one being character. The second one is challenge. You don't have a story until you face a certain type of challenge. You don't have a story until, in some other technical terms, they say conflict, right? If I begin to tell you, for example, on my way from Dar es Salaam, heading towards Kilimanjaro, I met a policeman on the road, and that policeman pulled me over, and he tried to get a bribe from me. I told him, no, I cannot bribe you. So he took out his gun and he pointed it at me. Suddenly, we're beginning to have a story. True or false? Yeah, we're beginning to have a story because we've introduced the second element that makes a story, which is a challenge, right? So you can't just have a character. You can't just have an event. You have to have a character who has a goal, but that goal, there's a challenge in between that character and their goal. All right? So, cha. Now, who wants to guess the last cha? I'll give you 1 minute for that one. You have a character. They have a challenge. What would be the final cha? Just put it in the chat. Derek says solution, but remember it has to start with cha. Change. There we go. Excellent. We have some very smart people here. Excellent. So you have a character, they face a challenge, and there is some change. Those three things are the main components of a story. Fiona has asked, so every story should have a challenge? Yes. You don't have a story without a conflict. You don't have a story without a challenge. If I say I woke up in the morning and I drove to the office, that's not a story. If I say I woke up in the morning, I drove to the office, someone stopped me, I knocked someone over, suddenly we have a story. What changed then after that? So if I'm speaking about, for example, the story of Tanzania banning single-use plastic, for example, right? I can start thinking about how can I package this as a story? If I was going to package it as a story, I would start asking myself, who are the characters involved here, right? If I want to tell an impactful story, I would begin with a character, I would look for a challenge, and then I would show how things have changed. I'll give you that example. So I want to tell the story about how Tanzania banned single-use plastic. There are so many different characters I can choose from, right? But I need to pick one. I could tell, for example, the story of, let's say, a campaigner, an activist who created this national level campaigns that were about how we should ban single-use plastics. She must have, and in this case, there's a lady named Tanya here in Tanzania who was one of those campaigners. There were many, but there was one campaigner, lady called Tanya, who went to parliament, who went to the streets, who spoke to the different political leaders. Her challenge was that for a lot of people, this was not considered a major problem. Here in Kilimanjaro, where I am, back in the 90s, they passed a law that anyone who litters here in Kilimanjaro, anyone who litters pays the equivalent of $50. For a lot of people, that is an equivalent of like a very big portion of their wage, right? And so it was very, very, very difficult to find in this city, which is sometimes called the cleanest city in Africa. These days I hear it's Kigali, but Moshi in Kilimanjaro is often considered that. And it's because in the 90s, someone said I'm going to make it very, 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 very difficult for you to litter. I would pick then a character. Let's say I pick the activist. I would pick another character. For example, I could pick the political leader who announced this change. But most impactfully, I would want to pick someone whose life has been changed significantly by this issue of single-use plastic. And sometimes, for example, that might be a non-human. For example, I know an organization that we worked with called Seascape, and they work with sea turtles. You know, these tortoises in the ocean. They work with them, and I could pick one of their turtles to be my character and tell a story about a certain turtle whose challenge used to be that they were caught in single-use plastics, but now this no longer affects them. They can hatch in peace, etc., etc. Whatever it is, I need to begin by selecting a character. I need to show what the challenge is, and then I need to show what change has happened. Now, someone, I believe, who is written Techno, has said that instead of change, I think it should be a goal. I'll explain this. When we say character, challenge, change, the challenge is in relationship to a goal. So it's a simplification that a character has a goal. They face a challenge because they have a goal. I don't know is it clear? The change, of course, is in relation to whether you succeeded or you failed. And I will send you a more complex framework that you can map out. This is the challenge. This is the character. This is the goal they had. This is the challenge they faced. And finally, this is the change that has happened. I want to give you a little exercise before I go to the second framework that I'm talking about, is to think through the story that you had written earlier. I know that we've written some of these stories here. To think through, because so many of the stories I've seen have challenges and changes, but they don't have human characters at the heart of it. And if you want to have an impactful story, you want to have a human character. Because why are you telling these stories? Because you want to transform the lives of human beings. I usually say, for example, if we focus only on abstract things, for example, problems in an abstract level or numbers in an abstract level, they don't really connect to people as stories about other people. And I'll give you an example. If I go if I tell you, for example, right now there's a war in Palestine. Israel and Hamas are warring, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't want to make it a political thing and say, oh, where do you stand? Where do you, whatever. But we know that there's a war and it's ongoing, right? If I tell you today that 20,000 people have died between last month and today in that war, is it impactful? Yes, it is, right? It is impactful. But we hear these numbers all the time and we listen to them and we're like, okay, you move on to the next thing that you were doing. But if I tell you the story of a young boy named Hassan, and one day on October 14 last year, when he was walking home, he hears a blast in the direction of his home, and he starts running towards their house. On his way there, he sees everybody, his entire village is running away from the village, not towards. They carry him, and they tell him that his father is most likely has passed away because their home has been bombed, and they're put into this ambulance and they run into the desert. They've been there now for 15 days and they need your support. Which one are you more likely to support me? This story of Hassan, the young boy, or the story of the general abstract number of 20,000 people have passed away since last month? Most likely it's this single character story. That's the power of storytelling. I can ask you for your support more purposefully and more impactfully by telling you the story of a character who has faced a challenge and there has been some change in their life, than if I just give you abstract things about, oh, this is a problem we faced, generally speaking. All right. So I will challenge you to go through the stories you had written here, identify a character, identify what challenge what goal they had, of course, what goal they had, and what challenge they faced in terms of reaching that goal, and then what change happened. All right. Is everything clear up to this point? Yaira, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. I'm trying to do, yeah. So Davis has said it's understood. Yes, it's clear definitely to me. I've seen Davis says it's understood. See, yes,
And
Derek says
Emmanuel has
yes,
also
it's clear.
shown me and Derek as well.
Derek
Thank
says
you guys,
yes,
and
it's clear.
Katlego as well. Thank you. And
Yeah, you do
Benita,
have
wonderful.
6 minutes more though.
Okay, excellent. Now, the second thing is, even in terms of when you're measuring now the impact of your story, the first those three things I've told you, the character, the challenge, and the change, are the things that you are looking at. But I want us to ask ourselves then, who did okay, you've written your story. You want to make sure it's impactful. There is another small framework that I will share with you that is, I don't know if I will be able to flip my screen, or if not, I will send it. Someone, Collins, I will get to your question. But while I do this, I think Michael is doing a good job there of redoing his story right in the chat. So please do the same. You said I have 6 minutes?
5 minutes now. So you have
5
15 minutes
now.
for questions, but for the presentation, a little 5 minutes.
Okay, great. So I hope this is a framework that you can use to rewrite your story more impactfully. But if we're going to measure the impact of our story, I'm going to write it down here because my pronunciation might be different from East Africa. This is another framework that I am calling RICE, but RICE with REIS. Okay? I hope everyone can see it in the chat. If you can see it in the chat, just give me a heads up. When I say this RICE framework, you're looking at 4 things. One, you're looking at reach. Okay, when we talk about reach, we're talking about your audience size. How many people were you able to reach? All right, you've written your story, you've published it on Medium, on your blog, or you've put it in the newspaper, or whatever it is. But how many people have you reached? How wide is your reach? More importantly than reach is engagement. All right? How are people interacting with this? When we're talking about engagement, we're gauging how your audience is interacting with your story. You could have a wide reach, but low engagement, and you've probably not done as good of a job as you want, right? You could put your story on, let's say, Instagram and Facebook, and you reach, in terms of views, you get wide number of views, but how many people are actually engaging with that story? How many are commenting? How many are interacting? How many are liking? And how many are sharing? At Honor Stories, we measure a lot of our success of stories in terms of how many people are sharing this story, right, with others. And then what is their emotional response as well? There's someone with their mic unmuted. What is their emotional response as well? And then you also want to measure impact in terms of when we talk about impact here, we're talking about what are the concrete actions that people are taking because of my story. I told you, for example, that we did a campaign that then led to Tanzania banning single-use plastic. You can say that, okay, this story was impactful. Now, of course, it's never going to be one story that does that. It's never going to, you're not going to write a single story and get someone to make a nationwide change. But you can start tracking on as small a scale as you can. What are the concrete actions that my audience has taken after this? And then finally, shift, change again, right? Character, challenge, change. The last one here is shift. What systemic changes, what policy influences have we had because of the stories that we've told? And so I hope these two things will stay in your mind. Number one, cha-cha-cha. A story is character who has a goal and they face a challenge, and that either they succeed or they fail, but some change happens. Cha-cha-cha. Character, challenge, change. And you then have to measure reach, engagement, impact, and shift. I will send you guys a more, maybe through Lydia, or I will send you guys the notes for this, so you can just refer to this as one had asked in the previous session. But I am now open to questions. Yair, I don't know if you want to do like a bridge between me and the questions. I've seen one already in the group
Yes.
chat.
There was one even from Collins. Is it Collins? Yes, he was asking about the character. You mentioned you'd come back to it. So
Okay, great.
Is it supposed to be an actual character, or you can create a fictional scenario to drive home your point?
So there's no right or wrong approach on that. I'm assuming a lot of the stories you are going to be telling are going to be real stories. So the challenge on your side is to look for real impactful stories. And if you'd like, I can send you like a questionnaire that I usually use to interview people and to find good characters and good stories to tell. If you think that will be useful, I can. I'm assuming many of the stories that we tell are going to be about real characters, real people, real individuals. You could even say like a character, like I said, for example, the sea turtles who their lives were transformed by the ban on single-use plastic. I will share. Collins, I will share, as you said. The ban on the plastic could be a sea turtle, and you could give that sea turtle a name and talk about the challenge they were facing before. They almost died because they almost choked on a plastic that was thrown into the sea. And now, with this new policy, their life has been transformed. You could create a fictional character if you think it's something that can drive your point home. I know many social changes have happened because of fictional stories, right? In West Africa, I don't even need to preach to the choir. We've had Chinua Achebe and Chimamanda's fictional stories have quite massive real-world impact. In East Africa, we have people like somebody is complaining about not being sent their presentations. I will send them to Lydia, and if you can, hound her, I'm sure she will make sure you get it to them. But more importantly than even anything is that you remember these three things. That you want to tell your story with, center it around a character who has a goal, they face a challenge, and some change happens in their life. Is it a fictional character? As long as you mark it as fiction, it's fine. Derek, you've had your hand up for a while.
Okay, Derek, you can speak.
Yeah,
we do have some questions there, but after Derek.
Hello.
Hi, Derek.
Hello.
You can speak.
Yeah. I want to add something to what my brother is trying to say. I know it may be somehow difficult for maybe some of us to understand where or the point that he's building up be. But I do.
I'm not sure I can hear you.
Understand it really simply. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, you're breaking at
A
a
little
point.
louder, please.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It's I think the connection problem. Now you hear me well?
Yes, it's better.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to say that what my brother is trying to say, it maybe sounds somehow strange or different from some of us, but I do really understand it really simply, and I do understand it to be like it's basically he's not trying to really tell a whole kind of story of like your way storytelling, but he's trying to bring a point that you can base on it to write your story, and I understand it to a point that the character, the challenge, and the change is something that if you are already on a problem solving, for example, on ways that we are trying our best to solve, it's basically depend on who is intervening in this kind of challenge. Like what kind of challenge are you having in your community? Who is trying to solve the problem, and how did it end? What was the change? So we should understand it to be like he's trying to open our eye and our mind to understand where we are bringing our point from. So if you've already started solving a problem, you will know who is the character, the challenge, and the change. Is something that you have to understand. But I'm not trying to say like everybody has to understand. This is what I've really understood of where he's bringing his point from, and we are already on it as my organization. We know the character as me or my organization. We know the challenge which is facing by the community, and we know the change that we are putting on the change that we want. So I would like him to maybe send whatever he's speaking about to people who do not really understand him. I do really understand him perfectly, and I thank him for that, for brainstorming me for this kind of understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Derek. And regarding the slides, Lydia mentioned at the beginning that it's going to be all sessions are going to put together. The slides from all sessions will be kept together and sent to us. So I know that we've mentioned that we've not received them. Don't worry, we will receive them, including Prinsley's own as well. So Prinsley, there's a question for you. Fiona wants you to elaborate more on shifts.
Okay, so I believe we're going to leave this and start telling a story, right? Please mute now, Derek. I believe we're now going to be we're going to leave this and start telling these stories, right? And we want our stories to be impactful. Now, when I talk about shift, it's what are the systemic changes, and what are the what are the systemic changes, and what are the influences or the shifts that have happened because of my story. I gave the example that because of a sustained media effort that we did here in Tanzania, we were able to get our policymakers to pass a policy that single-use plastic is banned. If you ever fly into Tanzania, you're actually told before you get off the plane that, hey, if you don't want your stuff confiscated, take away the plastic bags, leave them inside the plane, right? So that's a shift. That's something that changed because of stories and because of campaigns that were done. So that's what we're talking about when we say shift. If I say that I'm going to be telling a story about, I'm going to open, for example, one of the stories that we talked about. Let's say Caleb here talked about sustainable energy for a healthier future. And he talked about traditional charcoal and firewood use for cooking results in massive deforestation and indoor air pollution. The action is that the organization will provide eco-friendly briquettes and energy-efficient stoves and solar-powered cooking solutions to communities. and that this will lead to reduced greenhouse gas emissions, improved indoor air quality, and better public health outcomes. I would take this and say, who is the character, Mr. Caleb? Is there a lady in your community who has moved from using traditional charcoal and firewood to using your organization's briquettes? And now, the challenges that they had, whether it's a health challenge, whether it's a monetary challenge, whether it's a social challenge, has there been a shift? Has there been a change in their life? That's how I would rewrite that into a story rather than an essay or a composition or whatever it is. Into a story, I would look for a woman who your organization has touched. Their life has been transformed because of the briquettes that you are giving them. Then you have a powerful story. And the shift that we're talking about, Fiona, is that, for example, a policy or an impact or a wider change in the community has happened because of your story. I don't know if that is clear. I can see Kasompe Mfula has their hand up and Caleb is muted, but I can see that he's speaking. So Yaira, lead us there.
Yes, so we'll take one question from the chat, but then Kasumpi will speak. That's how long should the stories be? I saw a question. Yes.
How long should the stories be?
Yes.
So now I don't know what formats.
Yeah, Davis wants to know how long the stories should be. Yes.
So I don't know what formats you are doing, but it depends. Everything depends on the context, right? You don't decide. There's something called form, context, fit, and I'll write it down here, hoping that it will be useful. Let me just put it on the chat. I don't know how to access the chat anymore. But you can write it down for me, Yaira. Here, I've found it. Form, context, fit. This is something you can Google even later if you want. But when you talk about a form is the shape something takes. For example, are you making a video? Are you writing a blog post? Are you writing in a newspaper? Are you writing it on Instagram and Facebook? What is the form your story is going to take? It has to fit your context. How long should it be? It has to fit your context. If you're writing on a newspaper, for example, it might be a little longer than if you were writing on a social media post. But if you're writing a blog post on Medium, it might also be a little longer than if you were doing a video. If you're making a documentary, which is also a story, it will be longer than if you're making a short film, or it will be shorter than if you're making something for people to share on WhatsApp. So what I'm trying to give you is not a prescription in terms of you need to do this long, this whatever. I'm giving you the framework that will enable you to tell a story of any length. A 1 hour film, if you decide to do a documentary, or a 3-minute thing, or a 30-second clip that you want to people to share on their WhatsApps. All of them will be successful stories if they have a good character with a strong challenge between them and their goal, and there is a big shift that happened, a big change that happened in their life. I hope that is clear and useful.
I hope, Davis, your question has been answered. Yeah, so we'll go to Kasompe. You can ask your question.
All right. Thank you so much, Princely, for that. This has been very, very insightful. I'm looking mostly at the character part because it actually makes a lot of sense when you put it into that perspective. If we just have a story and it doesn't have a character, it doesn't quite come together. But now if we're looking at it from the perspective of an organization, it does become a bit difficult to think if every time we tell a story, do we have to come up with a new character? But then I'm thinking maybe a mascot. This is me spitballing. Maybe if we were to have a mascot, that becomes our core character. So every time we tell the story from a different perspective, we now have this one character that our audience is very familiar with telling the story from a different perspective. So an example of that would be for some organization we have here, I think it's called Water Utilities. They had a campaign on Save Water, Save Lives, but to tell that story from different perspectives, they had this character mascot. Their name was Toti. Toti means drop in Setswana. So they would have Toti, a little drop drawn with a smiley face, telling the story of what happens when you save water, who's not thirsty when you're saving water, what happens when you save water. So I'm assuming that actually did help with the storytelling and helping us to connect to it. Because instead of coming up with a new character every time they're telling us to do something, we knew, oh no, there's that mascot, and that mascot represents the character. So maybe we can take that approach as well as organizations.
That's a very good idea, and you can keep your mic on because I have a few questions for you, Kasompe. That's a pretty good idea, and it could work in certain contexts. For example, if you're an organization and you want to have you want to tell multiple stories from different perspectives, but use your character. However, you might also want to tell stories about the people you're impacting, and they might have quite significant impact. So, for example, the same organization that you talked about, the water aid or water utilities. If they told a story, for example, of a little girl who comes from a village that didn't have water, and because people, you connect how, because people have been saving water in this part of the country, it's led to us being able to provide water in this other part of the country. I don't know your specific context. I'm also spitballing here. You could then use that individual character as a way of actually showing the impact that your organization is having. So I wanted to ask you, Kasompe, your specific organization, what is it and what do they do? So I can give you an example of the kinds of characters you could have in your stories. And Yaira, tell me how much time I have as well. And Fred has their hand up. You're muted.
Yes, sorry. You do have 4 minutes.
Okay, so very quickly, Kasompe, just tell me what you do, and I'll give you a quick one, and then Fred, you'll tell us your thing, and I'll be done.
Okay, so the organization that I'm with is Thrifty Threads. We focus on reworking, upcycling, and reselling clothing that's been either thrifted, hand-me-downs, or just people have sitting around. So when you look at that, we mainly look at the youth in our country. This particular instance that I was given, we could have a mascot, but then as you're saying, we could look at it from a different perspective and say, this person has done this with this clothing item that they used to have sitting in their closet for 5 years, instead of using a mascot.
And that type of testimonial could have quite significant impact, because people can see that, oh, I could do that too. That could be me as well. I think you've answered. I don't even need to give you an example. Yaira, guide me on how to deal with the question from Fred and Sydney. And
okay, there's one from Davis too. So we'll take Fred, then Sydney, then Davis. Yes, yeah, so okay, Fred, great. You can ask your question.
All right, thank you so much. I think mine is just reflecting critically for some of the interventions that you do that are more or less community-wide. You're doing an intervention that is affecting the entire community. So you can also be able to tell a story about how the community has been impacted, by that particular intervention. So in that regard, our character probably from an individual comes maybe a community, and the measures of the impact can be also captured from the community perspective. And then, although the individual part of people who are within the community, but also you can also give a story. You can write about a story that has had a community-wide impact and how the community has been able to transform or change. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely an approach that you can use, and that's a very good comment, Fred. But like I said also, you can still tell community stories through the lens of a single individual. And you look for the most characteristic example of the individual who's been impacted in that community. You could still tell the story of the entire community. But why do the biggest organizations in the world, let's say UNICEF, why do they usually pick a single character and say someone like Malala? You know Malala? Malala Yousafzai, the one from Pakistan, the girl who couldn't go to school and she fought for her village. She was not the only one who was impacted. There were millions that were impacted by her actions, but they picked that single character. Oh, Greta, the Greta Thunberg. Yeah, why do the little girl from Sweden with the environmental stories? We usually pick a single individual to stand in for the community because people connect more with other humans. But within your story, you showcase that now you see this one girl, there's thousands more like her in this community who have been impacted. I won't go into too much detail because we don't have too much time, but these are both valid approaches. You can tell the story of the entire community, but if you want to have even more impact on your reader, you usually want to focus on one single person and say they represent thousands others. Welcome, Sydney. I've already answered Davis in the group. He asked about continuity, and definitely you can. In fact, you can tell stories of a single character and follow them over the years and show how this project or your organization has been impacting them for years. For example, Sydney, you're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, mine is a question. After telling your story, can you have some challenges, especially a backlash, especially in an environment where maybe there's no political will? You know, we are governed by politicians, and when politicians don't buy something, they're likely to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's not that if you tell a good story, everybody's going to like it and everybody's going to love you and you're going to win awards and the change is automatic. It's part of a longer term process. I think there's a mic that's...
Kindly mute your mic if you're not speaking.
Yeah. There's so your story is part of a multi-pronged effort. It's not the only thing that's going to shift things for you, but you use this. It's like one of the tools that you have. You know, like a Swiss Army knife. This is one of the knives. Or if you have, you're going to farm. Sometimes you need a hoe. Sometimes you need a cutlass, sometimes you need a rake. You know, you need multiple efforts and multiple tools. A story is only going to be one of those tools. And of course, you can face backlash because people, you know, we have had stories that some powerful interests don't want to be covered. And in that sense, of course, you will have backlash. So what we've been trying to cover today is not that a story is like a bullet, a single bullet that will change everything in your community and it will do, all these different things for you like magic, but that it can be part of a powerful arsenal that brings change to your communities. And I've given you examples of how we've been able to do that specific thing, for example, like banning single-use plastic, using stories in the newspapers, on social media, on WhatsApp, speaking to these people, politicians directly here in Tanzania.
Sydney, is your question clear and answered? Is the answer clear for you?
Yeah, no, it's clear. It's clear. Thank you very much. I just want to know that. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Presley, for this session. Thank you for making this very engaging like this. And I believe that with this framework, it's not just identifying the impact, but the impact can be monitored, it can be measured. So thank you so much, and we'll be
Thank
having
you,
our
guys.
last session soon. Do you have, please, you are saying something?
I'm saying thank you very much. I appreciate having spoken to you guys, and I hope this can be useful for you. Character, challenge, and change. Thank you.